Are you ready for part two? Part two of Sam Seder's epic debate with Ethan Klein. There were so many Sam W's in the first part of the debate, and the rest of the debate is no different. Lots of Sam W's, lots of Ethan L's. So first we have the clip where he's trying to get Sam to agree to trash Hassan for not endorsing Kamala Harris. And just like in the first part of the debate, it is constant but Hassan. There is so much but Hassan, I'm gonna start putting a K in front of the H. But Hassan! Also keep in mind for this part that when he says, oh, he probably voted for Jill Stein, that's a lie. He never endorsed Jill Stein, never said he was gonna vote for her, never even said he liked her. That's just made up.
If you agree with that, great. If not, I'm happy to discuss it with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. And part of the reason why, like, this chasm started between me and, you know, Hassan is very influential. So when he decides that somebody is an enemy of the movement for criticizing him, which is what I perceive happened, then it kind of becomes reality. For example, one of my criticisms of his is him not supporting Kamala Harris. Now, would she have stopped the war and been like a perfect dove? I don't know, but I know she would have been better than Trump. I know that for sure. Trump's posting like this insane Riviera, the Riviera with Trump hotels. I mean, that's and like he's sending the 20-pound bombs. He's telling Netanyahu, you have a blank check to do whatever you want. Now, like
it just came out that Biden didn't, did nothing to. I mean, listen, I think.
Well, talking about Kamala.
I suspect that
they have the same policy.
I suspect that she would not have had the same policies as Trump. But at the same time, I think that it was a massive failure, both on a real human level. Like it would have, I think, had she articulated anything even remotely close to what I would hope her difference would have been, I think it would have probably had implications in the election. But I think it perhaps even more importantly, it would have maybe implicated the behavior of Israel. So, I mean, look, I chose to support Harris because I perceived her as the lesser of two evils. But
yeah, me too. And I think that's an important distinction to make at a time like this. Yeah,
I can certainly understand how some people were just so repulsed by what was happening that it made it almost impossible for them to vote for Harris. I think
I understand why they didn't. I totally understand the perspective. Like, I'm so disillusioned with this administration, I can't support Kamala. But at the same time, like, a hugely influential political streamer like Hassan, who has a huge influence on people, I think, and who's someone who who's very vocal about being pro-Palestine. I feel like it's an abdication of responsibility to be like, I'm not voting for Kamala, or I'm not telling you who I voted for. I suspect he voted for Jill Stein personally, but either way, he hasn't said, and he wouldn't endorse her. Now, like, if you're just like a random protester or whatever, and like you're like, I'm so disgusted, I don't want to vote. That's fine. But if you're like a high-level political streamer,
you guys attack regular people.
Basically, you have the capacity to weigh like the lesser of two evils, and what that means. I feel like it's an abdication of responsibility to not make that call.
That's such bullshit.
I mean, I certainly have been critical of people who, generally don't vote for the lesser of two evils. But I think, it certainly, in the run up to the 2016 election, I certainly, that was my perspective. But again, what the Biden administration was doing was so horrific that her inability to signal that there would be any change, I think sometimes you have to take this at face value. And I think there would be certainly, definitely other things. You would not be assaulting the government like Trump is. But,
refusal.
I think probably this is the first election in as long as I've been doing this, and I think it's been 5 elections now. I mean, I'm old, that I couldn't really condemn someone from taking that position based upon what we were seeing. I mean,
it's not just some random person. I do, and I'll tell you why. Kamala Harris wanted a ceasefire. She stated that. Trump said, finish them.
Oh,
I mean, let's be honest. Like, for someone like Hassan,
I want a ceasefire.
I'm not voting for Biden. I'm not talking about Biden.
I understand, but we found out that Biden, in fact, did nothing to bring that about.
Their policy was the same.
I can't talk about Biden. I'm talking about Kamala Harris.
Yeah, same policy.
I mean,
well, she's the vice president. I mean, at the end of the day, she doesn't really do that much, right?
No. But I'm talking about the candidate. Biden, as a president, said he wanted a ceasefire. She, as a candidate, said I want a ceasefire.
But even if you're like, I don't know how much I trust them. One's like, I want a ceasefire, and the other one is like, finish them.
Well, listen, I think it was certainly obvious to me that Trump was going to be worse. But I think, like, if you're trying to get the candidate to show some indication of this, I can understand. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I would disagree with it. But
yeah, I get your point too. Like, ultimately, I understand why people wouldn't want to support them because of what they've seen, and like that, it feels like
it also shows a tremendous amount of just like electoral malfeasance on her part. I mean, they made an active choice. And I think, you could have put that Palestinian lawmaker from Georgia on stage. They made an active choice to signal to whomever they were signaling that they weren't going to do anything. Now, I happen to believe that she would have been better on this than Trump, but they were making an active choice to do that. I mean, it was really electoral malfeasance on her part, in my opinion. But I don't know what the point of litigating this is per se. But
well, we're talking about kind of my criticisms of Hassan.
Because I want to talk about Hassan.
Yeah, I know.
Honestly, like,
let me show you this. This is
I don't. I honestly.
Yeah, you don't care. I know.
I don't care. I
And,
don't.
and why should you? I don't blame you. We talked about anti-Semitism. And
There is so much to unpack just from that clip. Putting aside his like actual obsession with Hassan, but Hassan, but Hassan, but Hassan. It's like, oh my gosh, I love that part so much where Sam is like, I don't care. I don't care about Hassan. He's like, why are we even talking about this? He's like, 'cause Hassan. It's also a lie that Hassan told people not to vote for Kamala Harris. He never said that. He never once said that. He just didn't endorse her. And he doesn't have an obligation to. I don't care how many fucking loser liberals want to get online and demand that internet personalities or streamers should have done this, should have done that. He goes, oh no, I'm just saying it because he's a really influential streamer. I don't say it about random people who didn't want to vote. That's a fucking lie. Every fucking liberal puts it on every single random person that they didn't vote the way they wanted them to. But even Hassan, who is an influential streamer, you have no right to his endorsement. I'm so tired of liberal entitlement. The fucking entitlement of Democrats and libs to just be like, well, you owe me an endorsement. But you'll notice they never hold the Democratic Party accountable. Never. Liberals never hold their own fucking party accountable. It's all about Hassan and how it's Hassan's problem and Hassan's fault that he didn't endorse her. When you've had none of that accountability ready for Kamala Harris or her campaign or the Biden administration. And when he goes, oh, well, it's different because it's Kamala, that's a distinction without a difference. She made clear multiple fucking times that her policy was Biden's policy, that there was no daylight between them, to quote that article. When she was asked on The View, would you do anything different than Biden has done? She said no. There was nothing. They continually kicked pro-Palestinian voters and Arabs in the face. They wouldn't allow, as Sam mentioned, anybody to go on stage and speak on behalf of Palestine, even a Palestinian lawmaker who was going to endorse her. And I kept waiting. I literally kept waiting and kept asking, give me something. Give me something to indicate, Kamala Harris, that you will be any different than Biden on Gaza, and I'll vote for you. And you know what they said? Fuck off. They told all of us who were against what was happening and asking them to give us any indication that things would be different to kick fucking rocks. And then this idea that, like, there's any evidence that they would have been different. Oh, well, she said ceasefire, even though it's already been reported that they never fucking asked for one. And Trump said finish the job. You know what the difference is? It's just typical fucking liberal just wanting there to be window dressing. It's that Trump is just more crude about how disgusting we are. He's just more out in the open about how vile we are, about how ugly our society is. He just says it out loud. Just because Biden and Kamala lied and told you pretty little lies about how they care very much doesn't mean shit, because their actions were the same. This was the same administration that, as Palestinians were starving and people were telling them to enforce the Leahy laws on them for starving the Palestinians, Antony Blinken went and lied about what was in that report in order to continue to send them funds and bombs. This was Gaza in 2025 in January when Trump took office. No, you don't get to set the table to enable this fucking Holocaust for 14 months as they did, and then try to absolve yourself of it and lie to people and make them think you were going to act different. Again, I don't give a fuck how much fake empathy Kamala Harris and Joe Biden demonstrated. This was the result. But it doesn't matter what the facts are, because Kamala Harris said, I hear you, I see you, I want a ceasefire, to a crowd. That's sufficient for them, and they want to ignore all of the massive glaring evidence and statements from her that she said nothing was going to be different. Nothing was going to be different. Israel has a right to defend itself, is what she just kept saying over and fucking over. If you are on the left, or a regular voter, or even an influential streamer like Hassan is, what you shouldn't accept are all of these cowards refusing to hold their party accountable. Because again, they want you, random person on the internet with no power, to be accountable for what the fucking Democratic Party did, chose to do, and what they notably chose not to do. It is their job to get people to want to vote for them. They fucking failed to do so, and they did it on purpose. They fucking knew. They had internal polling about this. They chose not to. In fact, when people who donated to their campaign would email them or send them donations saying things like ceasefire now, end the genocide in Gaza, you know what they did? The Kamala Harris campaign, they took them off their mailing list. So Ethan Klein can lie lie and say that he's only talking about Hassan and not regular people, which again, Hassan has no fucking obligation to endorse that fucking genocide. And they can continue to do this. They can continue to attack voters, shame voters, try to bully voters into doing what they want. But you know what? It's not fucking working. It's not working. The Democratic Party is a bunch of fucking losers that have a 21% approval rating, and your asses are going to get handed to you in 2026 and 2028.
I mean, then I think we the three of us agree on that
Guess
regard.
what's coming?
I think
Guess
we're
who's about
so
to vote?
another thing is like to take it even further. I mean, Hassan pretty much like openly
Let's
supports
not talk
Hamas.
about Hassan. Let's talk about this.
Sure. I mean,
Let's
what do you
just
want to ask
Well,
me?
I mean, if you want to ask me about,
Amazing.
if you want to talk about Hamas, I mean, I think, look.
Well, how do you feel about Hamas?
I feel that Hamas, people can perceive it as a liberation organization. We call them terrorists in this country. We call the
What
ANC
do you think about
terrorists.
them, Sam?
Listen, I think there are parts, I would imagine, of Hamas that have done good for the people in Gaza, and I think they have done bad things. But I sort of feel, I guess, ultimately probably like Ehud Barak when he said that were I Palestinian and I was living in Gaza, that it would be likely that I would join Hamas. I mean, that's what Ehud Barak said on multiple occasions. And I think that is very, that is an understanding of human nature.
That
when
you're
you
not
are the
supporting
subject-
Israelis, by the way, just to point out an inconsistency there.
How so?
Well, you're not. You're like I refuse to understand human nature and their reaction. It's just evil, and I don't know how to explain it.
I
what
didn't
he
use the word
said.
evil.
Right. I'm inferring. Because I asked you if you think they're evil. You didn't really answer that.
Listen,
You avoided.
I don't know what Gazans felt on October 8th, but toward Hamas. But I can tell you that there is a long history of terrorist organizations or so-called terrorist organizations like the ANC or the IRA, even the PLO,
Now, Sam,
that ultimately become political organizations.
I think the
And
comparison to
when you-
Hamas to
when-
what happened in South Africa is insanely disingenuous, and I personally hate when people do
I
that.
mean,
Except it's
Mandela
not.
didn't think so.
Well, Mandela did think so. He explicitly stated that he
That's-
avoided
oh my God.
committing violence on the citizenry because it would make reunification impossible. That's something he said.
I think you could
In
say
the
that
totality-
tactically speaking. Listen,
In the
tactically
totality,
I
by the way,
love
Sam,
how
in the
evil he's
totality of their
thinking he's
campaign,
owning him.
I think under 200
It's
civilians
his
died,
face.
and the people who did kill civilians.
First of all, he's lying about South Africa, and I will remind everybody that Nelson Mandela was called a terrorist constantly for years. I don't even think he was taken off the terrorist watch list until like 2008 or some shit. You mean like Marwan Barghouti, the Palestinian Mandela, as they called him, who's been in a cage for 23 years? What they don't want to admit is that no form of protest is acceptable to them. They just want them to sit there and die. I also love so much too how Ethan Klein keeps thinking he's doing gotchas, and like you can see it in his face expressions. He'll be like, yeah, did you? Just to point out some inconsistencies in your point. Bro.
The IRA was bombing places in England and throughout Ireland. I mean, we have even the Irgun or the Stern Gang when they killed over 100 villagers in 1948. I mean, the history is full of examples of organizations that commit terrorist acts.
well,
Now, I will tell you,
people look at South
personally,
Africa-
I do not condone the killing of civilians, which is why, obviously, I'm upset about what Israel is doing.
Sure.
Exactly.
And the part that I don't like about
It's
people,
horrific.
people say, I feel like people sweep for Hamas by saying, like, what do you expect, right? But the truth is that people use South Africa as an example, but what South Africa shows is that you don't need to commit a violent war against civilians to liberate yourself.
A war
Well, I
against
mean,
civilians?
Listen, we had for a year, we had the Great March of Return, where Sinwar
Thank
himself
you.
was involved in that. There was Palestinians marching on a regular basis over the course of the year. I don't know how many it was, 50 or whatever, that were innocent people who went there, and snipers are shooting down unarmed civilians. And so, time and time again, and over the course of the 20 years that I've been professionally, covering this, my attitude towards Israel's willingness to have peace has changed, and my understanding of it has changed. And I can only imagine how more intense that feeling is to be living in a place that is, functionally like, the Warsaw Ghetto, insofar as like you don't have access to resources, you have 50% unemployment. The apartheid that is taking place in terms of the West Bank. I mean,
I agree with those characterizations,
I
by
can't
the way, Sam.
imagine
Just to
what
say.
I would. Okay, but I can't imagine that my response wouldn't be to pick up a weapon.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
It's not really working out.
Well, none of it's working
thought
out.
you
is it?
said
I mean,
not
we have
much
the
at all. Not
greatest-
really much
what
at
is
all.
called the greatest attack on Israelis in 75 years. The notion of Zionism and the way that Israel is organized as a society is not protecting Jews.
Well-
It's not protecting Israelis. It's not protecting Jews worldwide. It is. There may have been a time where Zionism and there were certainly proponents of Zionism in the early 20th century, in the late, perhaps late 19th century, where there was a notion of a multi-ethnic democracy that fell by the wayside folks like Hannah Arendt and Einstein, left the Zionist Congress, and what it has evolved into is, I think, a nightmare for everyone involved. And so, I don't know how I would react in that type of miseration, frankly.
Well, can I ask you?
But again, Ehud Barak said that he would pick up a weapon were he one of them. And
that's fine.
He's far closer to the conflict than I am.
I'm not saying I don't understand why people pick up weapons, right? So let me ask you this: what do you think about October 7th attack?
What do I think about it?
Yeah,
I mean, it was horrific.
Mm-hmm. And this was like a military action by Hamas to what end?
I mean, I suspect. I mean, I don't know what the strategy was. I mean, they attacked 2 military bases. I don't know if they were aware of that the dance.
The Nova rave.
Yeah, I don't know if they knew that rave was happening. I suspect it was to derail the Abraham Accords, which were going to leave the Palestinians out of the equation, where an authoritarian.
You leave out that they attacked Kibbutzim, by the way.
No, yes, of course they did. But I'm saying that they.
So did the
I don't know what
IOF.
the strategy was.
Okay, so what do you think? Like, would you expect the response of Israel would be to that?
I had no doubt on that day that Israel was going to respond.
Go insane. I mean, yeah, right. It was going to be horrific. We all knew.
Yes, but I think I think the lack of proportionality was just beyond, frankly. And I was aware that this was going to be a horror show, but I don't think I had the level of awareness of what they would do to go in and literally level it, destroy what is it, 90% of the structures in Palestine, bomb hospitals, that they would use.
Hamas didn't know that because that's why they attacked.
Food as a weapon.
I'm more interested in the justification for what they're doing there.
I love how Ethan keeps saying, I agree with you, and then goes on to disagree with everything he said. What he's trying to get him to do is say that the Palestinians should be perfect victims. They should love the Israelis, despite how the Israelis dehumanize them and treat them and keep them in concentration camps. He totally disregards what Sam says about the context of things like South Africa and the IRA in Ireland, claiming he understands the Ehud Barak example and then turns around and goes, yeah, but they should have been peaceful.